My name is Eric Rubio. I'm the Director of Student Services for Walton County Schools. Today we have the privilege of having Dr. Thomas DeMaria speak with us again. Dr. DeMaria is a clinical and school psychologist with over 20 years experience in behavioral health leadership. If you've watched any of the previous videos, you've gotten a taste for what he brings, a lot of experience, a lot of expertise in the field, and presents it in a enjoyable manner. So we look forward to your presentation today, Dr. DeMaria. So I'll hand it off to you.
It's an honor to be here with you guys, and Eric, thanks so much for putting this together. Good evening, or hello, everybody. Today's talk is going to be about helping your child manage their anger. Something as a parent myself, you get good at it over time. But before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to go over some things about anger that I often hear people talk about, and I want to just correct it a little bit. First one is children can explode with anger. I hear parents say, I'm so frightened my child is going to explode with anger. I can assure you that, and we'll talk a lot about anger is just an emotion. Children don't explode with anger. Children can get aggressive. Children get passive aggressive. Children can get oppositional, but they don't really explode. The other one, because I guess anger has bad press, is that all anger is bad. Well, anger is a feeling, and we'll talk about that too, that it's not all bad. Some people believe that it's better to hold all that anger inside or to vent it, swallow your anger rather than cause problems or vent the anger. Where I can tell you the research on health says that if you hold all that anger in, it causes high blood pressure. And if you let all that anger out as an adult, it gives you heart attacks. So it's better to not let high levels of anger. And again, we'll talk more about it. Anger automatically leads to aggression. So aggression and anger are very different. Anger is caused by other people. No, you own your anger, and your children own their anger too. Anger is inherited. Your children may try to convince you that, but that's not true. And you must be aggressive to get what you want. And that's one that we got to kind of take a look at again, because if children believe that that's what anger is all about, and they believe that aggression is justified, you got some trouble with them as they get older. But we'll sort that all out for you. So hopefully you'll learn more about anger, more about how to help your children understand anger, manage their anger, and grow with their anger, and also help kind of circumvent all that aggression that could happen. So the first thing to understand anger is that anger is a feeling. It's not aggression, which is a behavior. So if I'm feeling angry, that's okay. It's a feeling, like you can feel sad, you can feel anxious, but aggression is the behavior we're most concerned about when anger turns into aggression, or when anger is kept inside and it builds and builds and builds. Expressing or holding an anger is not healthy, as I mentioned. Not good to keep all that anger in your system, either by venting it or holding it in. And people in situations may activate, but they don't cause anger. Anger is something that you cause, or we cause, and your children cause. So as much as that your children tell you, you're getting me angry, well, I may activate anger, but there's other things in you that are causing that feeling to happen. And helping them understand that difference is really important, because it will help them take ownership of the level of anger that they have, and how anger, and really important, can mask other feelings like fear, shame, or guilt. One little boy was studying for his exam, and his parents said to the boy, "How are you doing studying? Why do you wait for the last minute?" Really motivating. And the child lashed out at the parents, "You never supported me. You never loved me. How can you putting all this pressure on me?" And really let out. The parents said, "Whoa, don't talk to me like that." And the child stormed out of the room, stopped studying, and then the parent was banging on the door. "You better come and study. You're not going to pass the test." I don't know if that happens in your families, but that's what I hear from families, that it starts off with a comment and then it quickly escalates. And we'll talk about how to de-escalate, but also talking to the child more about the fear of the test that they were going to take that might have led them to procrastinate. And the anger is just a coverall emotion. And sometimes we don't see it like that. We sometimes don't dig a little bit deeper and see that emotion that's below the surface. Aggressive behavior or hostile comments complicate relationships and often lead to problems. Not the best way to get things accomplished in life is to be aggressive. And we'll start out helping your child not resort to that. And children learn how to express their anger. Children learn how to handle that emotion. That children learn how to deal with a lot of feelings. Some children, you learn to take all that anger and channel it into sports or exercise. Some people get creative when they get angry. Some people talk more or share more with people when they get angry. Again, all these emotions are really important to understand because all these emotions, and anger being one of them, are really helpful to us. And that's really a kind of essential theme, is that feelings are feedback. Feelings tell you what's going on inside. Feelings tell you what might be bothering you or what's lurking below the surface. So it's important really to help your children understand that feelings are feedback, and that feedback is good if it's kept at a certain level. Now, by that I mean that oftentimes anger is all that you see. There are other emotions, though, that lurk behind below the surface. Kids who are angry sometimes are scared. They feel trapped, embarrassed, tricked, offended, annoyed, overwhelmed, guilty, grumpy, alone, insecure, nervous, frustrated, jealous, disrespected, regretful, worried, uncomfortable, sad, helpless, shamed. That could be all below the surface, but all you see is the grumpy child who looks angry at the child, who snaps at you at the dinner table. Again, anger is one of those emotions that kind of can cover up all the emotions and gives kids a sense of feeling powerful. So you can't just look at the tip of the angry iceberg. As a parent, you got to realize that there might be something below the iceberg that you got to keep an eye on. So how do you help your child develop strategies for controlling anger? And by child, again, as I've done in all the talks I've given, it's about children, meaning children, young children and adolescents, teenagers. Immediately, they got to be aware they're angry, calm down, use some things to time out, de-escalate, don't let the battle keep going, and seek support. In terms of relationships, they need to learn how to better communicate their needs, assert themselves in a good way, be effective interpersonally, and problem solve, and ultimately prevent these little episodes from happening where anger is kind of out of control. By understanding where the anger is cooking, what causes it inside to boil up, challenging angry thoughts and beliefs, and learning how to forgive us all for not being as perfect as they'd like, or for unnecessarily and unintentionally frustrating them, which is really something not intended. A boy was sitting in the waiting room, and I was about 5 minutes late because I had a crisis I had to attend to. And the boy came in really angry, really frustrated. And he looked at me, he says, "You wasted my time by having him wait in the waiting room." And I said, "You're right, I did. I apologized because I had somebody go later." And he looked at me kind of strange because he didn't have an adult apologize or acknowledge to them that they made a mistake and they apologized for the situation. And we began talking then about his anger at not being respected, not being listened to, and we dug into deeper issues. But if I went right at the anger and said, "How dare you say that to me?" we would have been stuck right at the anger. So understanding what those underlying beliefs and thoughts sometimes are covered up by the anger is really important to do. So helping your child better anger starts with some key questions. Is your child aware when he's angry or she's angry? Most kids aren't. "I'm not angry, I'm sad." "I'm not angry, I'm anxious." No, it's angry. And we'll talk about the vocabulary of anger. And it's one of those emotions that people don't like to admit, but they feel it because anger can be known by a lot of different words. What activates their anger? What gets their anger going? What gets the juices flowing? What gets them really angry and frustrated? Why do they stay angry? Angry, like any emotions, will come and go. It should be an emotion that flows in and out. What causes it to stay put and stay in their lives? If I become angry, what's the best way to obtain what they want? Is anger the best way to get what they want, or is there other ways that they can be more effective? Again, your child should be thinking about this and thinking about these questions. And hopefully with the information you get during this presentation, you can help the child kind of walk back a little bit in terms of realizing that they don't have to be that angry anymore. A parent I was working with said that when they would ask the child how they did in school, the child would scream at her. He said, "How dare you? It's my life. You can't talk to me." This is a teenager. "Leave me alone," and slammed the door. So the parent bit her lip, gave herself a timeout, and waited for the child to come down and said, "I'm sorry, I should give you more space. I have to work on that. I guess I was just curious, and I have to be more patient." And the child said, well, thanks for admitting you made a mistake. And I said, yeah, but if I'm crowding you a little bit, just say, Mom, I need space. That might be a lot easier than you have to use all that emotional muscle by being angry and slamming doors. And then the child said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be it, but I just was having a bad day. No, whenever you want to talk about it, you let me know. I'm here for you. And whenever you say, whenever you want to talk about it, the child will begin talking about it. It's one of the tricks I've learned, that tell somebody they don't sometimes have to talk about it on their time, and them not feel pressured or compelled to talk about it. And you'll be surprised how often they want to just jump in and talk about it. Help your child recognize anger. First step in terms of anger management. And anger varies, but it's that heart racing increasing, the tightness in the chest, the back. Anger. Like you're kind of angry a little bit, but tell me what that means. Again, oftentimes people disconnect and they're not that aware, and that's really important to kind of sort out a little bit. The other thing, and that's kind of important, is that the other emotions that may be masking by the anger, the abandonment, afraid. We talked about a bunch of feelings, disrespected, humiliated. Oftentimes, anger covers those all up and makes the child feel powerful. And child should recognize that certain thoughts are angry, especially when they talk to themselves. I'm going to get him. I'm going to kick his butt. He's good. How dare he do that to me? Or fantasies the kids have about all they're going to do, and they're going to tell somebody. They're going to stand up to people. And sometimes inadvertently, parents will encourage that by saying, you tell that bully that he's whatever. Again, you just encourage the escalation. And that thoughts about aggression, revenge, grudges, all that continues. And the child doesn't see that as they're holding on to anger, but it's certainly hot potato that the kids are holding on to, that they have to remember that they're feeling. Now, words, there's a lot of words when a teenager especially comes in with anger issues. One of the hot buttons for teenagers when I see them, they come in and they say, I'm not angry, I'm just frustrated. Well, frustration is kind of in the lineage or family of anger. I'm grouchy, I'm grumpy, I'm disgusted. I'm not angry, I'm disgusted. Okay, I'm resenting. That's all anger. It may be not different words, and I'm on this list. From anger can mean aggravation, agitated, annoyed, bitter, contempt, cruelty, disgust, disliking, grouchy, grumpy, fury, frustration. All those are words that describe anger. The English language, or any language, there's lots of fun words to describe it, but they're all anger at different levels. Some are low-level anger, like frustration or concern. When your daughter comes home at night past curfew and walks in the door at 1 a.m, and she looks at you and says, you're angry at me. No, I was just worried about you and concerned about you. Well, you're angry. You're just dressing it up a little bit nicer because you want to scream and yell and feel power yourself because you were so frightened. But again, the underlying feeling is fear, but the adolescent says is, Mom doesn't say she's angry, but Mom is angry. Again, that's the whole point I'm trying to make, is sometimes by using incorrect language, it kind of gets the adolescent to sort of model that language and not believe what you're saying to them. So if you're angry, you're angry. If you're saying you're frustrated, concerned, worried, when you really were angry, I think just, I was angry because I didn't know where you were. I started to worry. I couldn't watch a show that I wanted. I had to interrupt dinner. And that caused me to be inconvenienced, and because of that, I was frustrated. So again, language is really important. Sometimes we dress it up too much and we don't get to the core. Now, as I mentioned before, there are levels of anger. Not all anger is the same. And we all start life feeling kind of calm, relaxed, cool, focused, and peaceful. And if you look at the diagram, it's that green part of us. Everything is great. And then what happens? We get a little bit annoyed, a little upset, stressed out, nervous, and things don't go your way. There might be eye rolling, sighing, raising a voice, glaring, stomping feet. It's a little higher on the anger scale. And then what happens is you get more upset, and this is where people start to feel anger and frustrated and irritated. they're uncomfortable, they can't think clearly, there's a negative attitude, and they have all those physical symptoms. The body feels hot, they're clenching the fist, loud voice. And then it gets to be where they're boiling in rage, furious, angry, mad, yelling, screaming, kicking. But it doesn't go from the green to the red right away. It works up the anger tree, so to speak. So realize that when your child is starting to get upset and annoyed, keep it escalating. It's just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. The anger response is going to get. And your goal is to keep it in the bottom part of it so you can talk to somebody. The more angry you get, I always tell children and adolescents I work with, the more angry you get, the more stupid you get, because your anger is running your brain. So we got to get you down where you're kind of at a level where you can kind of handle that anger. And that's really what's most important. Keep the anger at a level that's working. Not get rid of it, because anger is important. It's a feeling, and it could be masking of the feeling. But don't let it escalate. Don't let it go to those high levels. And that's when you can't think as well. Now, I've worked with a number of adults, kids, and teenagers, and people report different ways they identify anger. The clenched jaw, grinding teeth, tense shoulders, dizziness, headache, shaking, heart beating faster, clenched fist, breathing is harder and faster, the pacing, knots in the stomach, palms get sweaty, start to sweat, scowling or frowning, all are signs. And it's depending on who you are and what the way you express it and the way your child sees it, there's different ways of seeing it. But again, if your child looks at you and you're frowning at them, they say, "Mom, are you angry?" "No, I'm not angry." "Well, you are, because you're showing me." Yeah, that's your tell. And kids figure us out pretty quickly. It's kind of hard to not feel that by tone of voice or what we say and what we don't say. Sometimes they pick it up there also. And again, help the child realizing when they're starting to get those warning signs that the anger gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Harder to breathe, they're starting to feel hot, etc. They know it. You can ask, where's the anger now? Is it green, yellow, or red, or scalding red? And they can tell you it's getting to be red. Okay, let's take a walk. We can talk about this later, but starting with that common knowledge, common language, and common understanding of how the body reacts in the anger is really important. Because everybody knows that when the pot begins to boil, sooner or later it boils over. And we want to get it where it's simmering. If you're a cook, you know the joy is simmering, especially with delicate sauces and delicate meals. Well, anger is the same thing. If you keep it at a simmering level, the conversation cooks well. But if it starts to boil over, everything just gets a mess, and we can't let the pot boil over when we talk. So what activates anger in a child? Talking and working with children and adolescents. Well, sometimes we make comments or there's a situation that touches on sensitive, vulnerable areas. Sometimes anger is caused because the adolescent feels there's a potential loss of power, status, or respect. Big word, respect. Provocation by others who insult, tease, bully, or belittle them. And there's trolls in social media who just like to be mean, and they're out there, and they don't understand that that's just people loving to be mean. People or objects who get in their way of achieving an important or pleasurable, not obtaining what they want, memories for their past that generate anger, threat or an actual emotional, physical pain, threat, and also failure can anger them. So as you can see, a lot of this has to do with the child feeling vulnerable, disappointed, upset, not getting what they want. So when you pile on and cause the pot to boil, you're not going to get at really what got them, what activated the anger, as a way they protect themselves. So it's important to realize that there are a variety of situations, a variety of things to get them going. And you kind of make sure you don't add to the fire. So these are things that you might have heard your adolescent, if you're a survivor of an adolescent out there. Someone is mean or disrespectful. I get blamed for something I didn't do, having to do all these responsibilities in the house. People don't listen or understand me. Someone gets in my personal space. I get a bad grade in school. Somebody touches my things without asking. Someone talks badly about my friends or family. I don't get to do or have something to do that I don't want to do. I have to wait for my turn. People yelling at me or yell around me. Someone lies to me or breaks a promise. I get grounded, lose privileges, or someone takes their cell phone. I get treated unfairly by adults. Someone interrupts me as I'm talking. I lose at a game or activity. Well, I didn't tape your family, I promise, and I didn't tape your adolescent or middle school age kid, and sometimes younger one. But this is the things I'm sure you've heard in the, and all these are things that you've heard, and you got to realize, don't take the bait. We'll talk about how you can help them learn how to be more effective, but realize that these are all just hiding other issues below the surface. Now, one thing you have to be careful of is that when your child, especially your adolescent, really feels threatened and is afraid of pain or being humiliated or shamed, that puts it right at the high level of anger. That really gets them going, especially with humiliation. And that's a tough one. And it's hard to know what they feel shame, humiliation, or threatened by. And you don't want them to start to think that they have to deal with that without your support or helping. You're not helping. You're helping them in some way figure out what they should do. If your adolescent is saying that it's wrong, unfair, people should do this, that type of thinking, another red flag for you. Blinders, my way or the highway. They can't accept that there's a compromise and there's no other way of resolving the issue. And unfortunately, as an adult, we model that behavior. Rigidity, I'm 100% right, they're 100% wrong, there's no compromise here, they don't understand, they're stupid. Overgeneralizing, this is always happening, this is always happening to me, these people are always doing it. And again, the other part of it, and this always gets to parents, the demanding and entitled statement that they should have it and they can't have it, it's mine, I deserve it, I worked hard, you promised. Again, that humiliation, shame seems to be at the core of a lot of those angry thoughts that really push it over. Now, anger is a habit, and it's a habit you don't want your kid to get into, because why? Because they get rewarded. And if they get rewarded for being angry, if they yell at you and you kind of back down, then they'll say, the kids are smart, they learn, they'll say, I yelled at mom or dad and they back down, so if they give me or make me do something, I'm going to yell again. Again, it's a habit that kids fall into, and families tell me, all my son does is yell. That's all he does, yell in the house. Well, what do you do when he yells? Well, we try to appease him. Well, if you're trying to appease him and he's yelling all the time, well, that's why he's yelling all the time, because he's getting a reward. And what happens for some people is they have an angry outburst, and then they'll feel guilt, and then they'll apologize and have low self-esteem. And they have low self-control, and then the anger happens, they don't know how to contain it, and then it bursts again. So anger is just, it could be a habit because people are getting what they want, but it also could be a difficult cycle because people go through that cycle of doing something they regret and then apologizing, but then doing it again, and ultimately it doesn't make them feel good about themselves. You would think that all these angry people really like themselves a lot, but my experience as a psychologist is no, not really. They're doing that because they don't like themselves that much. They can't find another way to be in a relationship because they're afraid, they don't trust the people they're with. And sometimes they have core issues that they really haven't resolved. So you don't want to keep that anger as the cycle. Certainly you don't want to continue it for your child or adolescent. So when does anger become a problem? And maybe you need to think about getting some professional support for your family or child. Well, when it's too intense all the time, too frequent, it's expressed inappropriately, it causes health problems, it limits personal, social, or academic growth. They're mad at the teacher, they're cursing at the teacher, F in school, this F in this, all those type of kind of things that you hear all the time. Wow, something's not right. The anger is cooking between, that pot's always boiling. That's not a good thing. And obviously, if there's aggression or harm to others, animals, property, that's when anger is getting a little problem, and you need to kind of think about maybe this is outside of what you can really handle in the home. So, and this is a hard thing, but anger and aggression get rewarded a lot because, and understand it, like motivation is a tough thing. And sometimes people motivate themselves by being angry. A person's playing sports and he gets angry at the opposing team, and coach says to him, they think you're nothing, they think you're garbage, they laugh at you, and the child gets really angry and is motivated to be the best that they can be. Well, that's unfortunately what we do sometimes. It's a bad model for kids because sometimes they know people on the other team, and when they play them, they realize they're not so bad. Or sometimes the anger gets so high that they do things to hurt other people during a game or athletic competition. So, but again, it's used oftentimes, and it's kind of dangerous, that we kind of use that to motivate people. Being angry or aggressive makes kids feel powerful. You don't want a 9-year-old to think they're powerful by being angry. Why? Because you're a little bit older than them, and supposedly you're a little wiser. And you don't want to give them that message. Anger can also energize, give adolescents and children a belief that they have energy all of a sudden. It gets them the blood flowing. Certainly gets attention from others when they're angry. And sadly, sometimes kids begin to manipulate and control others and become dominant, realize anger and aggression can get them there. It's a release of tension. Some people like to release that tension. As I mentioned to you, all that release of tension does is just maintains anger. It doesn't get rid of it, but it can be cathartic, so to speak, that people release all that anger. They hit the wall, they break something. Well, it may feel good to break something, but it doesn't really get rid of the need to break something again. And that's the point, is more effectively dealing. Certainly a lot cheaper. Some, though, and this is one that parents need to be concerned, it becomes part of their identity. They become the tough kid, or kid everybody's afraid of, and nobody's going to pick on me. And it's sort of like they're picking up armor that they need to put on, and they need to have this anger veneer, this tough guy, tough girl. And I don't know if you want that, because, again, somebody who's tougher will see them as a challenge. And all the nice people that you want in your child's life won't be available. And again, as I mentioned it before, sometimes anger is an easier way to deal with fear or other worries. Just be angry all the time, and people will stay away from it. I think having a discussion about negative consequences of anger, or maintaining anger, especially if the child is being angry, and obviously being arrested and being jailed, in the future losing your job, you can't yell at your boss and tell the boss horrible things. And the other part of it is, when you're aggressive, people want to get you back. And that's not good to be always looking over your shoulder, And also, usually, people who have a conscience start to feel guilty, shame, or regret after they've been angry or aggressive. So, again, it's one of those ones that gives you short-term benefit, but oftentimes long-term problems. And the other part of it's not aggression. People who are verbally abusive, who intimidate or threaten other people. Others will develop fear, resentment, and lack of trust toward the angry person. They don't like you. They're just afraid of you. And they'll go along with you, not because they like you, but afraid of you. And a lot of them report that they don't like the angry person, and they want to avoid contact with the angry person. So your child becomes someone who people put up with because they're afraid of him, but not someone they like, and certainly not somebody they're going to share or be intimate. And that's kind of a bad consequence for relationships or things that you want your child to be healthfully involved in. Now, one thing that kids don't get, and I work with this when I run groups for kids, is there's a difference between teasing and joking and gossip and sharing. And really, and children and teens will argue with me all the time about it. That was just teasing. Well, I just shared information that I heard everybody knows it. Well, it's really up to the person who is being aggressed against, or who's the victim of all this, to really talk about the difference between the two. It's not up to you. And I always encourage, well, would you like to have that mentioned to you? Would you like to be joked at about the way you look, or the way you dress, or rumors about what you did, or whatever? Would you like to be the victim of that? Well, I don't know. Well, why is the person who is the person that's being talked about or being joked to? And oftentimes that loss of empathy is really, really there, and helping your children understand that it's not good to be a victim. Nobody likes being a victim. Even though they play along, it's kind of a not nice stance for them, and something they don't want to certainly carry with them for the rest of their life. So how do children learn how to be aggressive, and not a good way to deal with their anger? Well, they learn from their friends, which is probably the least prestigious group of people you want them to learn about feelings from. They learn from social media influences, all the people who are popular on social media. They learn about a lot of moral values there, unfortunately, and ethical values too. Movie characters, they learn that when somebody's angry, they punch somebody or they shoot somebody. Well, there's other ways to handle people that get in your way rather than hurting them. media attention seekers, people who seem to be always on the media, aggressive people. And this is going to be hard for you guys to hear, brace yourself. They learn a lot about anger and aggression from family members and parents. We teach our kids to be angry and aggressive and not really use the feelings in a good way. Parents out there, have you said any of these things? And these are the things that parents say, and the kids hear it, and it keeps up and keeps that anger kind of going. Do as I say, not as I do. Because I said so. How dare you? I never treated my parents this way. I will not be spoken to this way. You do not have a choice. Kind of angry statements. Yet we don't want our kids to use anger, but we're kind of using it to parent. And we don't realize that. That's why I go through this, that part of helping a child manage their anger is for us to be better role models and look in the mirror and say, wow, I'm becoming like my mother or father. They used to say that stuff to me and I hated it. And we're doing it again. My kid's going to do it too. How do I stop it? Again, all you're telling the child is that anger or bullying behavior in the home is okay when you make these types of statements, rather than talking to them. Listen, there's some rules in the house, and those are the rules that we live by in this house, and we're disappointed that you didn't carry them out, and we'd like you to do that, or we'd like to work with you to figure out what the consequence would be. It's different than do it my way, or you're going to be punished. I'm going to take away your phone. You're going to not be able to ever go out again. And again, that just escalates the conflict with the child. But look in the mirror. Make sure you work on your own anger too. That's kind of important. And parents are not alone. Sadly, our role models in sports really encourage aggression. And rather than excellence in athletics and aggression, the primary motive is to harm or hurt, to injure. And it's really, any aggression is a violation of the rules in any sport. It doesn't help. Players that work their hardest and play like they should be, and it's a fair hit in a football game, it's not aggression. That's part of the game. It's within the rules. It's forceful, and it's a skill. Somebody who's able to make a tackle in a football game is not aggressive. That's a skill. And those guys are highly trained professionals, know how to do that. It's different than somebody going out just wants to hurt somebody or injure them or take them out of the game. Anybody who does that is really not an athlete. They're just being aggressive. It's sad because it limits your respect for them. But our kids see that. They see somebody and they don't understand that person who made that hard tackle in a football game, they're a professional. They know how to do it to stop the person without necessarily putting a person in the hospital or paralyzing somebody. That could happen, obviously, anything. And certain times, certain sports, violence is something that gets better ratings. But again, it's not necessarily the best way for kids to understand how to be an excellent athlete or achieve a lot by looking to hurt somebody rather than be their best and excel. Again, messaging is important, and talking with your child about that too, really very helpful. Now, a question I get asked a lot is, do video games cause? No. There's some positive things to video games. There are social interactions for video games, problem solving. It's a way for children to relax too. However, people who are angry play angry games. It just helps them practice being angry. So it's like dress rehearsal to being angry and aggressive. And as such, it may desensitize them sometimes to the level of anger that they have. So for aggressive children or children who have problems with anger, video games can be just a way of rehearsing that anger and maintaining it. But other kids who play may not necessarily be aggressive or angry if they're not that way. The games just really provide a way for them to connect with peers, relax, problem solve, and intellectually stimulate. So knowing who your child is, what types of games they play, how much they're on, and how much is really them maintaining their anger is something to keep a little bit of a close eye. So one primarily strategy is to teach your child how to manage anger if it gets too high. So they got to be realized that they are angry and the pot's boiling over, and that's really what's really a priority. And to do that, they got to be aware of that anger thermometer, the anger levels, that goes from being calm to being furious. There's a lot of in between. And there's things they can do as they grow up, as they go up that scale. For example, if they're annoyed, disappointed, and upset, they can go get some fresh air. They can do a hobby. They can move away from the trigger what's activating them. They can listen to music. They can talk to friends or family, and they can bring that anger down. If they're frustrated, irritated, and stressed out, they can squeeze a stress ball. They can take a shower, take a brisk walk, meditate, pray, journal about their feelings, go get a drink of water. And when they're really angry, furious, they can count to 10 or 100. They can tell an adult. They can stop and walk away. They can take a breath. They can spread paper. They can use something called grounding techniques. They can take a nap. They can move their body or exercise. They can talk to themselves and being calm, tense and relax muscles as a way to relax, or use imagery by thinking of a peaceful place. Not every child is going to be able to use these strategies at every level, but every child should have kind of a toolkit of what they use at each level when the anger grows for them. It can be really helpful. And you guys can talk and map that out and teach them as young children or as adolescents. How do they handle those situations when the anger just gets too important to help a child learn how to end a conversation if it's not going anywhere and set up a time to speak later. It's a great skill when I'm talking to my children. I'll say, listen, this is not going anywhere. We're tired or distracted. Why don't we talk tomorrow? And I find when we do that, the conversation next day goes a lot quicker. Sometimes you need to take a deep breath, either taking a deep breath or psychologically taking a deep breath when someone's just getting to you. We all have those days. I like to say as a psychologist, people don't get to me, but they do, and I need to take those deep breaths. And I tell the adolescents they can take calming thoughts and use coping skills. I'll go through some of those in a second. And leaving a situation is not a bad thing. So if you and your son or daughter are having a heated discussion and he or she says, I need to just step outside or go to my room, this is just going nowhere, let them. Don't say, no, you have to sit and talk to me. It's only going to escalate. It's only going to build. Let them go. And finally, if someone's having a hard time, if your child's having a hard time, let them know. Hon, you can always give me a call or text me, and I'll be happy to listen to you, let you vent a little bit. But listen to them. So sometimes we dive in right away and try to give them advice when they really just want someone to hear them out. I find the greatest skill you can do is listen rather than giving quick advice. A lot more valid to know that you're really trying to understand what they're doing. These are just examples of calming thoughts that the child can learn to say to themselves. Chill out, calm down, take it easy. It's a challenging time, relax, don't take it personally, breathe away the anger, breathe deep and slowly, don't yell. Listen to what they have to say, give them a chance. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you angry, don't get carried away. It won't kill you to do it, ignore them, don't get involved, it's not worth it, don't worry, be happy. Did I listen properly and get the full story? Just because they said no, it doesn't mean they don't care. It's not worth the fight. I can't always win. Some things even I can't resolve. Who says we have to agree? It's not fair, but losing my temper will just make it worse. I really can't afford to get into trouble. There is no emergency. I can think this through before I do anything. Easy does it. If I can keep a sense of humor about it. I have a right to be annoyed, but let's keep the lid on. Don't make more of this than you have to. These are all kind of things that the child tells himself just to calm down in the moment and not to get aggressive or violent with somebody or keep it escalating. And again, these are just other coping skills that they can use, stretching, reading books, quiet time, music, etc. And depending on the child, depending on their ages, and depending on where they are with anger, they might use these coping skills more. What's important, though, is to talk to your child about how to release the anger and let it go rather than how to keep it repeating in their brain. And obsessing or repeating how much they were insulted and how much they were hurt, rehearsing the situation again, keeping grudge lists and having all the revenge fantasies just keeps the anger hot. Your goal is to let it simmer down. Your goal is to not keep it going. And that's really what's most important here. How do you shut it down? How do you not let it keep going? And that's something you need to help your child learn to do. And this is one of my favorite expressions. I think I've said it a million times. Holding a grudge is like letting someone live rent-free in your head. You don't want to have them do that. And the best way to deal with somebody who gets you angry is to not think of them, because then they're not living it rent-free in your head. You let them go on, and you don't let them have it. And somehow anger binds us to people that we don't care about, and it's good to let them go. Dealing with provocations is the final part of this talk. And it's hard because sometimes kids see themselves stepping into situations that they just can't get out of. And sometimes you got to teach them how to handle it. Oftentimes they can't escape. They got to deal with that, especially if it's a peer or a classmate or somebody that they see all the time. They got to kind of manage that first. And one thing I always say, that he who angers you controls you. You can't let them see you sweat. You got to basically be at a place where you don't let them get you. And that's really most important. And part of it's part of something called interpersonal effectiveness. How do you learn to be effective rather than just a person who just gets by? And part of it is, and this is just a chart that shows the difference between the aggressive person, the assertive person, and the passive person. And the assertive person speaks openly, uses a conversational tone, makes good eye contact, shows expressions which match the message, relaxes and adopts an open stance and expression, participates in groups, keeps to the point, values self equal to others, tries to hurt no one, usually reaches goals without hurting others, and I'm okay, you're okay. That's an assertive person. That I'd like this, I'd like you to be happy too, and we'll talk more about the win-win philosophy, which is a great way to negotiate. An aggressive person interrupts and talks over others, speaks loudly, glares and stares at others, intimidates by using expression, stands rigidly, crosses arms, invades the space of others, controls groups, only considers his own feelings or her own feelings and makes demands on others, values self more than others, hurts others to avoid being hurt, reaches goals but hurts others in the process, and I'm okay, you're not. I have to be in charge. And the passive person obviously shows very little self-interest. So in a situation, a person could be assertive and communicate their needs effectively without any other baggage that they can accumulate. They can be aggressive. They can be passive aggressive, which is kind of like aggressive by not doing things, aggressive by letting things happen that shouldn't happen again. That's all passive aggressive. Or be a victim and not be able to get anything, and that's passive. And certainly being assertive can help your child get what they want a lot better. But to be assertive, they have to learn not to take the bait, because people will say things to you. If you really were a good kid, or if you really were a good parent, you'd do this. A real man would. You must know the truth. We all know that you're no good at that. Some people would say that you're a jerk, or I could do it. But again, people will say things to get you going, but you can't swallow the bait. A lot of arguments are started by people just biting the bait. And once somebody gets you to buy into it, they got you. It's like a salesperson. They'll try to hook you in. And once they hook you in, they got you. So you got to realize that those first couple of lines in a discussion or any situation, or you're being baited, don't take the bait, or they'll wheel you right in. Just say, okay, I hear you. Let's get back to what we're talking about. Just don't give in to those provocations. Feed your opponent. I had one adolescent who came in the room. He used words that I had to look up what he was calling me. And I said, well, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you coming in the room. Even you're standing up and glaring at me. What do you want to talk about? And do you like sports? Do you like music? And then he proceeded to curse me out more a little bit. And I said, I hear you. I'm going to let you speak. It's hard being here a little bit. I hear you. I admire you for not leaving the room and standing here. And after about 15 minutes of that, he sat down and we began to talk. Again, I had to feed him a little bit. I didn't say, how dare you? You sit down. What are you doing? Father's paying for the session. Wouldn't have got me anywhere. You gotta feed people sometimes. And that can help them calm down a little bit and recognize you're not the enemy. And even empathize with them a little bit inside. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. This must be difficult. Take a step back, try to walk a mile in their shoes. Sometimes that works. Helping your kids realize that the person who's the bully may not have a good home life, may not think so well of themselves. Still have to stick up for yourself, but if you want to negotiate with them, not giving into their provocation, not giving into their threats, try to understand where they're coming from can help you not overreact to what they're doing. A lot of us don't, and sometimes with our kids, we step on their toes. We call them hot words. We say something about a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever they're in, and they just flip out of it. I'm sure your boyfriend wouldn't like what you're saying. What do you mean? You leave my boy? You stepped on a hot word. Sometimes you got to pull it back. You got to say, oh, nonverbal behavior, scowling, looking down, looking bored. I'm sure your adolescent has done that to you when you talk. Bringing up past complaints. Oh, this is something I remember the other day. You did that at work. Personal attack. Overgeneralized comments, always, all the time. And obviously comments about family or group the person identifies with, especially your friends. You and your friends are no good. I don't like the friends you've been hanging out with. Ooh, you really work. Just shut down conversation. Never gets you anywhere. Again, we fall into this as parents, but we're teaching our kids to do the same thing. So we got to realize that they have to back away and not do that. Keep the conversation in control. Let them know where you're coming from. I always say, listen, let me tell you where I'm coming from. I don't want to hear where you come from. I hear you. Go ahead. You need to talk. I'll listen. Don't be an object, though. When people say, you men or you shrinks, so I said, my name is Tom. I'm a psychologist. That's what I do, but that's not who I am. We don't let them do that, because once you get objectified as anything, people find it more easy to aggress against you. It's kind of an interesting thing. The more you become non-human to them or an object, the more they can treat you badly. But if I'm Tom, how you doing? I'm here. You know, you're yelling a lot. That hurts my ears. You can yell if you want, but if you wouldn't mind, just lower the tone a little bit. It doesn't make me a wall that they're screaming about. Could you look at me when you talk? It makes me feel more comfortable. Talk that way. All that's fair. That's those gentle limits. And try to keep the focus on one topic when you're talking with your adolescent, when they talk to their friends about a problem. And say, listen, if you break that, I'm going to have to charge you, and that's going to get your father to yell at you and take away from your allowance, and have to go to the store and shop and get a new one. Don't break the land. If understand that there's consequences for both. And know when to end, and know when we need somebody else to mediate. Those are good ways to keep the conversation in control and not be victim. Key negotiating skills, again, is listening and not preparing your comeback. I find it's so hard not to think about what you're going to say, but if there's a time delay after they finish talking, that's okay, I'll recover. But if they think you're not listening to them, it's one way to stop a conversation. So summarize, restate, again, show them respect. I always admit my own mistakes and imperfections, and try to explain where I'm coming from as most as I can, so they kind of see that I'm not an adversary and trying to help them and me win in the situation. And a great way of you sharing your feelings and for the adolescents to share their feelings is a simple statement. And when I work with couples, I use this too. When you, I feel because I think, and I would like. When you come home late, I feel neglected because I think that you don't believe I'm worthwhile, and I'd like, if you were going to be late, to let me know. It's not offensive. It's not accusing them. It's not a how dare you. It's a nice way to express personal hurt and your needs. It's a great little assertion kind of way. When you, I feel because, and I would like. It's a nice way to express what your needs are and let them know that you'd like their help without accusing them of anything. Problem solving is a key to avoiding anger, and identify what you both want to fix and restate what they tell you, and keep it simple, and ask what they want. What are we looking to get out of it? Let's keep it simple. Let's focus on one victory. That's all we need to do. And again, problem solving implies understanding when it gets too far and keeping the focus on what can I do? What are we looking to get at? And again, problem solve wisely, think of a plan, and stay calm. And that's a great way to negotiate. Now, part of all this is a bunch of skills about anger and about managing anger, but a lot of it has to do with is kind of helping your family start to think it in a new way and let this anger be good feedback for you to kind of think about some some biases that certain times we have in our lives and we have to back away from. And the one that's really important is there are winners and losers. Yeah, in sports events there are, and sometimes in business, there has to be. But when you're with people, if you feel you won and I feel you won, I won too, we both leave happy, and we both don't want to get the other person. If you say, well, you win this time, I'm going to get you the next time, and I feel humiliated, I feel I didn't get a fair share, I'm coming at you, and people have to realize that I can leave a situation where you feel you got something, I feel I got something, but both of us didn't feel we just compromised and both of us didn't get what we want. That's a great situation. So again, compromise is important and something that's a goal, but if you can get to a win-win where both you guys feel you got away with something positive, that's a real home run in terms of teaching that life philosophy, that if you win and you crush somebody, they don't like that, and they'll come back at you, and you're making an enemy. It's much easier to make an enemy than to maintain a friend. Telling that's a pretty important life goal message. And this is a hard one. Practice acceptance and forgiveness. Let things go. Holding all those grudgeless. And it's hard because we probably have a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a teacher, somebody in our community that we kind of have issues for, and we're not aware how much we repeat that. One child once told me, my mom is always complaining about the neighbor and their garbage bin every day. She's done it every day. But when I see her with the neighbors, she's acts all happy. That's why I don't get my mom. If she's really that unhappy, she should, kids see this, man. But we maintain all this anger, or someone who didn't call us for a birthday 2 years ago, or we come up with all these expectations. And what that does is it makes us intolerant. And when we're intolerant, we don't accept people. It leads to that anger. Remember, I talked about that anger. You don't want to keep it cooking. You want to keep it cooking. But if we model intolerance, lack of acceptance, and unrealistic expectations for others, well, it kind of cooks anger, and you got to be careful. Now, this is a triangle that I think is really important, and it's important for all relationships, but it's important to kind of life philosophy that the amount you want to change in somebody else should be really small. The amount you tolerate a little bit more, and the amount you work to accept should be greater. We try to change people to be like us, or we tolerate people, but we don't really work to accept people. And we got to view what are the barriers in terms of getting other people to accept us to accept them, and how do all those shoulds and how are the people and rigidities. Again, they still kind of cook that anger for us, and cause us to sometimes forget that most people are just like us. They just happen to act differently, look differently, believe in different things, but the basic human condition is all the same. And that's why sometimes helping people understand that can help overall lower that way that we have anger, especially for our kids. And this is a neat expression that I love. Yesterday I was so clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise. I am changing myself. Again, it's important to realize that you got to work on understanding what your anger is telling you, rather than working to have everybody change just to be what you want them to be. And that acceptance and tolerance can go a long way. And part of it, though, is a lot of people are very judgmental. We're critical of ourselves. We wake up being critical, maybe angry at ourselves, or how we disappointed ourselves. We didn't stay to our diet, or didn't save enough money, or didn't work hard enough, didn't clean the house hard enough, whatever. We're criticizing ourselves all the time. But it's okay, because we're not perfect. We can strive for excellence and do our best, or even try to be very good, but a lot of people are just not satisfied, and they're not satisfied with other people, comments that other people make. We're certainly driving. The kids watch you driving. You're critiquing everybody about who's not making the right turn, who didn't put the directional on, who's driving too slow, who's driving too fast. Wow. We have all these things that we do, and we become very perfectionistic. And the problem with that is it's a trap, because ultimately, I'm not perfect, and I'll admit right away, you're not perfect either. This world is not perfect. But if we can be very good, that's wonderful. And if we can be excellent, amazing. But we're never going to be perfect. And excellence is hard. There's only few people who can achieve excellence. And we try, but if it can be good and very good, that's pretty good in life. And accept that in us, then we won't have this expectation for others for disappointing us and become so angry at them. And one of the basic rules of the universe is that nothing is perfect. Perfectionism doesn't simply exist. Without imperfection, neither you nor I would exist. That was a pretty famous quote by Stephen Hawking. And I think that understanding how the root of anger is intolerance, but anger is not a bad emotion because it can help us examine, to help us be more flexible and be more creative and learn to kind of basically allow things to pass without becoming so focused on them. And realize that most people, I believe, don't intentionally do things to hurt other people. There are people who do. And the consequences might be bad, even if they don't mean it. I always assume that people start with the best of intentions, even if they say something that's hurtful. But I don't think most people do it intentionally. Most people don't intentionally, and I'm not saying there isn't those people, but they're not the majority. Majority of people do have good intent. They just mess up. They don't do it very well. And nobody goes to a restaurant and intends to give their customers bad service if they're a waiter or waitress. But it can happen, and that's like with life. We try to do our best. We try not to get in people's way. We try to be happy, and we try to not get in people's space a lot, but sometimes we mess up. So again, that's part of that forgiveness philosophy. So I hope you've taken a look in the mirror and realize how anger is something that's in all of our lives. It's a normal feeling, and it's a feeling that we can learn from and grow from, and hopefully that's it. And by learning to control our anger, it can do nice things. It can motivate us and get us moving to make change. And that's a big, great function of anger. It can get us to work harder, but it also can go the other way and work to make our life more complicated. So hopefully you can pass it on to your children and model that by the behavior you show them. So if you're watching this, if you can complete a workshop evaluation by using the barcode on the next page, you just hold your phone up to it. And it's just a couple of questions just so we can report to our funders about how these presentations have been effective. So this is the barcode. And if you can hold that up, and you can't write things like Dr. DeMaria was wonderful, excellent, and all that stuff. You can tell me in person if you come into the conference that's coming up. But if you can just fill that out, we'd appreciate it. But thank you for your time. And thank you, Eric, for giving me time to speak again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. DeMaria. I appreciate your valuable information. And just real quickly for everyone else, the next in-service we have will be February 6th, and it will be talking to children about frightening events in the news with Dr. David Schoenfeld. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you.